guys really represent Virginia district. Republicans last in Chapter 2.
Some people want to be on this side. If you want to come, you still just come right here. Hey.
Which member that is?
Madeline Dean. Madeline Dean. Pennsylvania. Just wanna. Thank you. Maybe go right here and just kind of like on each side.
Okay. Do you want me to go on that side?
Yeah, on each side. Like 3 on each side is probably good.
Do you want to like circle?
Yeah. Are we doing how many? Is there going to be groups?
So it'll be 5 people. It'll be the speaker, Mr. Thompson, Giffords, Shannon Watt, and then and back. So if you just kind of want to be like on either lined up behind while they're speaking,
Okay.
I think that'll be perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Right. Give it into the family video.
The other thing, it'll be true. Yeah. These are still a way to move. So after they're done speaking, they'll move to the tables. And if you don't mind waiting till they're there to like kind of like line up behind them. Mr. Thompson.
Oh, so you want us to move over and line up behind him?
Yeah. And then at that point we'll do like a semicircle. And I'm sorry, I know it's very like a lot going on. Perfect.
I'm with you there. Happy pediatrics. Good day. It's good. Yeah. Got a nice, good team. Identical or fraternal? Wow. How did this never come up? Yeah. Where's your brother practice? Oh, wow. Yeah. Martina has found. Martina here? Yes. I did my last year. That's really yeah, it's a couple months.
Oh, there's more.
Yeah, until residence. Fine. I can apply on the West Coast, the Bay Area. So that would be a deal. It's actually wrapping up. I make my so much. They rank us.
Here. Okay. Where's Joy? Can you decide how to set them up? Yeah. So why don't we do kind of like shorts in the front? So how it's going to be is it's going to be the 5 people coming to speak. They're going to be right here. So what's going to happen is they're going to be coming really short. They're going to walk right through here. And then after the remarks are concluded, they will move over here. If you just want to let them move over before forming a semicircle like around them. Right here. Yeah.
They're going to be walking. I think we're going to be standing directly behind you.
We are.
I don't know.
I don't know if you.
I had to reframe the date after the 50th anniversary, and so I would be insane with making 30 homemade pies from scratch and bring it to our prosecution team, and they'd bring in the FBI and the local sheriff's department, and so everybody that was on prosecution, and all the guards and the courthouse and the federal marshal, and we would serve them pie.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very honored to be here with some very special guests who will speak about an epidemic in our country that must be stopped that we have the opportunity to stop. Before you hear from them, before you hear from Representative Thompson, who is the chair of our Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, new Congresswoman, just 1 week a Congresswoman, Congresswoman Macbeth, Sharon Watts from mine, and she's just been so completely remarkable about Moms Demand Action, and I just want to name some of the groups that are here, because so many of them have had contact with gun violence in our country. So many of them have engaged families in channeling their grief into saving other lives. The American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Federation of Teachers, the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, CAP, Ceasefire PA, Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, Every Town, Giffords, Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, March for Our Lives, Moms Demand Action, Move On, National Education Association, Newtown Action Alliance, and Newtown Foundation, Violence Policy Center. These are some of the folks who are here, but as you know, across the country, many people are making a decision personally to take action. They are joining organizations to amplify their voices. Those organizations are in coalition with other organizations to, again, enhance that power, amplify it all. Today, for us, is a grief of pain as we mark 8 years since the horrific attack in Tucson. Every one of our colleagues knows exactly where he or she was when we heard the news of what was happening there. Some of the news was confusing. All of it was saddening. I myself was at a synagogue for a bat mitzvah, but again, everyone can tell you the story. As through any crowd that we were in, or any group we were in, any place that we were, just the horror of it all came through. On that day, gun violence shattered lives in Arizona, and tragedy pierced America's heart. We were blessed to be with survivors of that attack and survivors of so many other acts of gun violence today. But today is also a day of action. We say enough is enough by finally bringing common sense bipartisan background check legislation to the floor of the House. Isn't that exciting? The gun violence crisis, again, as I said, is an epidemic that requires the energy and engagement of our entire nation. In that spirit, we are grateful to be with the advocates I named, blessed to be joined by my colleagues and participants I named, but I'm very honored to yield to the chair of our task force, a person who every single day, all day, 24/7, works on this issue with great brilliance. Chairman of the task force, Congressman Mike Thompson of California.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. As the Speaker said, I'm Mike Thompson from California, and I chair the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. I want everyone to know that I'm a lifelong gun owner. I'm a hunter. I also carried an assault weapon for a tour of duty in Vietnam. And I'm also the parent of 2 first responders and 3 pretty wonderful granddaughters. And it's an honor for me to serve on this task force. Speaker, thank you for making that appointment. And I want to also thank some important partners we've had along the way: the Brady Campaign, the Center for American Progress, the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, Every Town for Gun Safety, Giffords, and March for Our Lives. And I want to pay a particular shout out to the young student leaders in March for Your Lives who've had such an incredible role in getting us to where we are today. It's also important to thank Newtown Action and to recognize the Tucson survivors and the Richardson family who are with us today, who lost their child in 2010 on January the 8th. To all the groups who've been fighting for this issue across our country, their leadership has been incredibly important, and I'm proud to be a partner with all of them. Many, like the Brady campaign, have been fighting for decades for this issue. As a matter of fact, if it weren't for the Brady campaign, we wouldn't be expanding background checks, because they're the ones that brought us background checks in the first place. And 8 years ago today, we heard the terrible news that our colleague and our friend Gabby Giffords had been shot. I can tell you it was like a punch to the gut. Gabby was an incredible colleague in the House. She was a fantastic legislator who was just trying to do her job and to serve her constituents. And then it was barely a year later when our hearts were broken after the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School. Well, everyone knew that we had to do something, and that's when Speaker Pelosi started the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force. For 6 years, we've been working to find the most effective and the most efficient way to help save lives. We built an impressive bipartisan support, but we were still blocked from holding any hearings or for casting any votes. And even the American people have been speaking out and demanding action on this issue. Since Gabby's shooting, nearly 250,000 lives have been lost to gun violence, and over 800,000 Americans have been the victim of gun violence. All the time while Congress stood by and did nothing. But today is a new day. Today we have a new speaker, and today we have a new majority. And today we're going to take decisive action. Very decisive action. It's an honor to introduce the Bipartisan Background Checks Act of 2019. It's a bill that will expand background checks to all firearm sales. This is a bold statement about where we stand as a Congress, Democrats and Republicans. The bill has 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans as original co-sponsors: Congressman King, Judiciary Chairman Jerry Nadler, Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, Congressman Brian Mast, Congresswoman Robin Kelly, Congressman Fred Upton, Congresswoman Lucy Macbeth, and Congressman Chris Smith. And we know the people are behind us. Over 90% of Americans support expanding background checks. And they support it because they know that it's the first line of defense in keeping guns out of the hands of criminals and those who may be a danger to themselves or to others. So today we're going to take a bold first step. We're going to honor with action all of those lives that have been lost. We honor those mothers, fathers, and children, and all the loved ones who miss their families each day. We honor our colleague, Gabby Giffords, and she stood up as a powerful voice on this issue. So H.R. 8 is in her honor, and it's in honor of all those lives forever changed by gun violence. Know that our fight is just starting, and the voices and the strength of the public will carry us through this. And together, we're going to deliver for the American people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, making this a very different day. So many times after we have had a tragedy, and that's almost every day because it happens every day across America, but a high-profile tragedy, we will go to the floor and have a moment of silence, and that's it. Silence, no action. This time we will have a commemoration, a moment of silence, and in the chair will be Congressman Ted Deutsch of Florida, who's been a leader on this issue. Thank you, Ted Deutsch. Come up here, Ted. Be near with us. Ted Deutsch will be in the chair when that happens. And then we will take action with this legislation. I know you want to yield to our distinguished former colleague.
I do. I want to recognize a good friend of all of us and the person that I've already spoken about, a wonderful legislator, a wonderful human being, and a great voice speaking up for gun violence prevention, Gabby Giffords.
Stopping gun violence takes courage. The courage to do what's right, the courage in new ideas. I've seen great courage when my life is on the line. Now is the time to come together, be responsible. Democrats, Republicans, everyone. We must never stop fighting. Fight, fight, fight. Be bold, be courageous. The nation's counting on you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now it's my honor to recognize a new colleague of ours from the 6th District in Georgia, Congresswoman Lucy Macbeth, who is going to be an incredible member and brings to this the passion that can only come from someone who has lost a loved one to gun violence. Lucy?
First, I'd like to thank Speaker Pelosi and Congresswoman Giffords, Congressman Thompson, Congressman King, Congressman Ted Deutsch, and my fellow co-sponsors for their leadership in introducing legislation to expand background checks. 7 years ago, my son Jordan was violently torn from my life, a victim of a gun in the wrong hands. Today, I join my colleagues and former Congresswoman Gabby Giffords to prevent more families from facing the horror and heartbreak that is brought on by gun violence. Too often, sales without background checks, including unlicensed sales and online sales, have allowed guns to end up in the hands of violent criminals. By closing these loopholes and expanding background checks, we will make our communities safer. States that have already expanded background checks have lowered their homicide rates, their murder rates, and their gun trafficking. Background checks empower law enforcement to keep guns out of the hands of criminals and domestic abusers. Quite simply, background checks save lives. I am honored to co-sponsor this bipartisan legislation for my son Jordan, survivors, and for the safety of every family in this country. And I ask my fellow parents, my fellow members, and my fellow Americans to stand with us today in support of universal background checks. Together, we will make our communities safer, and the country deserves it. Thank you. Thank you. And right now, it is my great honor and pleasure to introduce to you Shannon Watts, the founder of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, and a mother warrior that we all need.
Thank you so much to Speaker Pelosi and to Congressman Thompson for inviting me here today on behalf of Everytown for Gun Safety and Moms Demand Action. I am proud to represent our more than 5 million supporters and volunteers, some of whom are in this room today. Two Moms Demand Action advocates with me today, Diana Earle and Stephanie Stone, share the bond of mothers whose sons were killed by gun violence. And like my dear friend, Congresswoman Lucy Macbeth, I love saying Congresswoman Macbeth, their fight is driven by a determination to ensure that no other family experiences the pain that their families have endured. As a grassroots organization made up of mostly type A mothers who have been fighting on the front lines of this issue in every corner of the country, I can promise you that we will do everything in our power to get this bill over the finish line, because there is no one more fearless, unfaltering, or formidable than a mother protecting her children. I'm so grateful for all of the representatives standing here with us here today, and to Congresswoman Giffords, whose courage and determination helped bring us to this moment. Speaker Pelosi kept her promise to the survivors of gun violence and all Americans that the 116th Congress would take swift action to keep us safe. Now our grassroots army of Moms Demand Action volunteers will fight alongside you to get this done. Thank you. And with that, I hand it over back to Speaker Pelosi.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Shannon. I see Shannon at work in California. It's hard to go to a church in any denomination without us wearing our orange and ringing our bell, and under her leadership to make sure that everybody knows that the crescendo is growing on this. And in that regard, I acknowledge Congressman Deutsch. I want to acknowledge also from Florida, Congresswoman Marcusel Powell, who's with us here, and also Dwight Evans from Pennsylvania, and Congresswoman Madeleine Dean from Pennsylvania. Thank you for being with us. The parents that I have met have said, we belong to a club nobody should ever belong to. We don't want any more members in that club. And we do know that this legislation can save lives. So before we walk over to the floor of the House to drop the bill in the hopper, I'm now going to, with great pride, yield to my colleague, Mike Thompson, who will sign his legislation to make it official and make it ready for the hopper. Let's go behind you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for
I don't want to bother, but would you be able to scoot over real quick? My foot's completely dead. Oh, sure. Yeah, it's scoot over on the seat. I'm sorry. It's not like all the time, but like every third time I have to sit down there, my foot just completely dies.